Thanks very much, and this is probably the most daunting audience I've ever had to share this talk with. Being fellow, I prefer to call you ex-servicemen rather than veterans. It's not a phrase that I'm always comfortable with. So thank you for accepting me as the speaker today. And my talk today is really about my journey from 1982 to where I am today, and which actually starts way back in 1963, and I'll explain about that shortly. Now, we all remember that fateful news bulletin on the 2nd of April, round about 10 o'clock news or 11 o'clock news, whatever it was, that the Argentine invaded the Falklands, and we were all being called back to our units and ships, etc. Well, I was stuck in just outside Warrington, a little place called West Horton, seeing my sister, and my leave address was actually up in Millom in Cumbria. So when it came on, I said to my sister Kim that I'd have to go back. Now, 1982 for our family was quite momentous, not just for the fact that we sailed off to war, but Kim, in the February, while we were away on just having a crack here with young Phil, who was also on the Fearless, we were away in the Caribbean, and she lost a child, younger than me, a child to cot death. So that was in the February, and when I said I'm going back, she said, "You don't have to go, Kevin. Your ship's not been mentioned." Well, being a communicator and quite a switched-on kiddie, that's why I went into communications rather than being a dabber, seaman. I understood exactly what ships belonged where, what task groups belonged to who. And I said to her that I'll be going, Kim, and I'm going to have to go back and see Mum and Dad tomorrow and say my goodbyes. And you could just hear the pleading in her voice. You know, she didn't want to lose her little brother as she just lost her son. So I got on the train the next day, and Millom, as you know, in Cumbria, it's very difficult to get to on the coast. Well, Millom from Warrington took about 4 hours. And several cans of Red Death later, as I walked through the door into our house in Millom, my dad, who had served in the Royal Artillery for 25 years, leapt at me as I came through the door, and I threw my grip in, and he said, "This is it, son. This is your time to serve Queen and country. It's what it's all about." I just looked at him and I said, "Really? I'm only 18, I'm too young to die." And that was the attitude I felt. I joined the Royal Navy so I didn't have to go to Northern Ireland and be shot at by our own people, just as my father had been back in the late 60s, early 70s. I didn't want that. And he just looked at me, and he just looked crestfallen, looking at his young son who's about to go to war, perhaps thinking that I'm a coward. But that's how I felt. And I went out that evening around Millom. Millom's a very small town. There's about 10,000 people living in the town at the time, 12,000 people. And whilst I was out on the RAS saying goodbye to my mates, the whole town were behind me. You know, you all remember that jingoistic feeling that was going on during 82. Well, that's what it was like in that little town. And everybody really spurred me on to go. And so next day when I was going, Dad and I had made up. He eventually came out and had a beer and a drink with us. And next day when I went to go, I had to get a lift from a friend because there are no trains. Well, there are now trains. There were no trains on a Sunday from Millom down to anywhere else in the world. So I had to get a train to Ulverston to make my way down to Portsmouth. And a friend said he'd take me. So as we're driving over one of the big hills there to get to Ulverston, I said to my mate Bosky, "Can I give you a tenner for petrol?" And he turned around to me and said, "No, it's all right, Kev." He said, "You can buy me a pint if you get back." And so it was a cheers, kid. That's exactly what I said. Anyway, it happened. Now, my relationship with Fearless does go back a long way. I was born on the 1st December 1963. Fearless was laid down on the 6th of December 1963. Her first active service was in Aden in 67. Those of us old enough to remember Aden, which is now known as Yemen, was in 67. I was out in Aden with my father, unmarried, accompanied, in the middle of a war zone. I was 3 years old. And Fearless came out to evacuate the troops. And then, of course, she was my first draft, which I joined in South Shields, and obviously went to war and came back, I'd like to say safely, physically uninjured. So we got back. Now, how many of you, I mean, there's quite a large naval contingent here, I've noticed. We've got the Invincible, we've got the Intrepid over in the corner, we've got the Fearless, Broadsword, Glasgow, the Glamorous. How many of you have actually been on the Fearless, whether you're Navy or Army? Everywhere you go, no matter what service you've been in, somebody has been on the HMS Fearless. She was in service for a long time, longest serving ship in the Navy once upon a time. And so she was a different class of ship. I'd like to say unique, and she was actually unique because during the Falklands, we'd stolen everything off the Intrepid a couple of years before, and they had to then get themselves together again. And we were unique because we had the satellite comms dishes. Now, just a little rundown of what Fearless looked like and what she was all about. We fought the war, or the captain, Jeremy Larkin, fought the war from up on the gun direction position, right at the very top of the ship, just like they did in the Second World War. He was a leader that actually led his men, and he led and commanded it from the top. Then we have the signals bridge and the bridge wings, where our Second World War 40-60 Bofors, 1944 and 1946 barrels were. And my action stations were on the starboard bridge wing, so I was outside all the time watching everything that went on. I didn't want to be inside any ship. I'd seen the results of the Sheffield, and I decided that I was going to be on the upper scupper. So I was out there. She was very versatile. You've got the landing LCUs at the back there, and today is the anniversary of Foxtrot 4's sinking, the 8th of June. We'd lower the back down, and these 4 landing craft would come out from the back carrying the troops. We had a Harrier park on the deck. She was running out of fuel, so we decided they could land on the Fearless and the Intrepid. There was 2 of them, and they landed for the first time ever. So, and we had 1960s Seacat against supersonic aircraft. Seacat fired at around about 250 miles an hour or something silly, 300 miles an hour against those supersonic aircraft. Now, having got down and sailed, as we all know, those that sailed down there, it took us ages to get there, and eventually we caught up with everybody. And as I left, my father gave me a little blue book to write in. He said, keep a record of what's going on. Keep a diary, Kevin. He said, I never did in all the time that I was in the army. And it'd be really good for you to be able to look back on, and your children to look back on. And that's what I did. And eventually I decided to write it up as a book. And it was very useful to have this diary because I ended up with combat stress, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But those that are on the Facebook pages that I'm on you've probably seen a few of my posts over recent weeks. But if you're happy for me to read an entry from my diary on Monday, 24th of May, then I'd just like to share this bit with you. I better put the glasses on. My eyesight's not what it used to be. Antelope still burning. At 10 o'clock, she was just a smouldering wreck with a thick screen of smoke drifting across the bay. Her back broke and her middle sunk, leaving her bows and stern sticking up, and slowly they're disappearing. By tomorrow, she'll be gone. Only 2 people were killed altogether. The first when the bomb actually hit the ship and went through, ripping a steward's head off, and the second was a disposal bloke with his mate losing an arm. We were actually targeted for the first time today. They changed their tactics and attacked from behind, giving an 18-mile run down the valley and a clear view of all the ships. The jets came screaming down in waves of 3 and 4, again flying very low, about 10 or 20 feet above the waterline, dropping their bombs and firing 20mm cannon. They turned on us, opening with their 20mm cannon and rockets and bombs. They came straight at us and were opened up on with our 40-60 World War II guns. The front of the bridge was strafed with cannon fire. One of the supply numbers on the starboard gun got hit on the wrist, making him drop his clip of 4 shells, his hand getting covered in blood, his white anti-flash gloves changing colour instantly to red. The steel screen behind the 20-inch signal lantern now has a hole in it where a 20mm shell went through. The port gun lost 2 supply numbers, one being hit in the foot. The other lad got hit on the head and in the leg, and he lost a lot of blood. He was hit and just collapsed on the deck. He made no sound when he went down. A shell ripped through his leg, sending blood and flesh everywhere. And one hit his steel helmet, splitting it right across the top and splitting his head open. And the steel dug into his skull. The deck was covered in luminous bright red blood, white sinews of muscle, and deep pink flesh. I had to hose it down, wash it over the side as if nothing had happened so he could fight again. If he wasn't wearing his helmet, he'd more than likely be dead now. But as it is, he's ashore having surgery on his leg. A shell or rocket thudded into the sandbags on the bridge roof but didn't explode. A bomb was dropped very close to our starboard side and exploded, as you can see in the picture, but no damage was done. There were 9 planes out of 15 downed. The scene after it had quietened down was like something from a film, with the air heavy with smoke and the smell of cordite, jets disappearing over the hills trailing black smoke, and then seeing black clouds as they crashed and exploded. Everything is quiet now, and we're all relaxing and getting over the shock of staring death in the face. Mel went off today. And our attacks continued for the next 4 or 5 days. And basically from an hour after sunrise to an hour before sunset. And they were quite ferocious in their intensity. And for those of you that were sitting on the hillsides avoiding our Seacat missiles and our small arms fire that was coming your way, I do apologise, but as I said, I was a communicator, not a gunner. Okay? But we all got through it, or most of us got through it. I got through it and came home to this small town in Milham, which was a slightly different place than what it was before I went away, in my mind. And when I left the Navy, eventually left the Navy, I went into some very senior roles in HR. And I was traveling around the country. I'd got postgrad diplomas and qualifications, etc., all over the place. However, things weren't right. My behavior became very erratic, heavy drinking, arguing with people all the time. Never fought. I've only ever had one fight in my life, and that was with my best mate, Bill Byrne, on the Fearless. That's one of the reasons I joined the Navy. I'm a lover, not a fighter, as most Matlows are. We weren't aggressive. Well, the ROs weren't anyway. And I was a new romantic in the 80s. Come on. I didn't need to fight or be tough. The women just loved me anyway. So, anyway, I'll take the glass off so I can see you. Things started to go awry shortly after I got back, and I came back to a hero's welcome. Is it coming out of that speaker? Yeah. See how skin and essence I really was? I was gorgeous.
Long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Anyway, I'm sure many of us got the same welcome. And Milham being a very small town, I was the only kid that went to war from there. So I came back. Everybody knew about me. Everybody knew what I'd been up to, etc. They looked after me while I was away. They looked after my parents, and it was the street people from the street that arranged that street party and did it for us. So they gave me everything, and wherever I went in Milham, I got lashed up. I rarely spent money for the first 3 or 4 months after coming back, which was partly part of my downfall, because in September I smashed a window, and so I'd gone from Millam's hero to half-naked sailor smashes window, and I got arrested and I got done for it. I had to go to court. Eh? Which half? Well, I'll explain that in a minute. And yeah, I grand slammed. What had happened? I'd been out, and they had some exotic dancers up at the Ritz. If anybody's been to Millam, we had these two nightclubs, the Ritz and the Cumbria. It's a bit like Rupert's or Joanna's down in Portsmouth. But these are the local ones in Millam. And it was like going to a school disco. And they'd had these exotic dancers on for the night. And I decided that I'd actually had enough alcohol. And I was with my brother-in-law. And I said, I'm not drinking anymore. So I was on orange and lemonade. However, my friends thought it'd be fun to continue to allow me to drink, and was spiking my drinks. I got home and I collapsed in a snotty heap on the landing. My dad had to carry me up to bed and put me in bed. About 5 o'clock the following morning, I woke up in a shed somewhere, half naked, with my black baggy pants and chain and suede shoes, covered in shit. And I'd followed through, threw up, and I couldn't find them actually. So I borrowed a jacket from this garden shed, and it was just a tatty old jacket to cover me up. And I had no idea what I was doing there. And 6 o'clock that evening, the police came knocking on the door and said they'd like to talk to me about this, because the lovely policeman, I'm not saying anything about any coppers here, Phil, or ex-coppers, but the lovely copper was an ex-Killick Wem, who recognised my Dobie number, my Chinese laundry number, in my Chinese laundry boxer shorts. They were very loud boxer shorts. And being the only sailor in the village, they came knocking on the door and then told me exactly what I'd done. I had no idea what I'd done. I honestly could not remember. And my father said to me when I got out the cells, and I was only allowed out the cells if I signed what they'd written, because the detective constable wasn't going to let me go anywhere unless I agreed with what he said. And my father said, look, when you go to court, you speak to your solicitor, speak to the magistrate, who, by the way, was the headmaster of the primary school down the road, so he knew me quite well. You've got to tell them that you're suffering with something called battle fatigue or combat stress. Now, he'd experienced this himself as a sergeant major with his young lads in Ireland. I couldn't tell them that. No way could I tell anybody that I was going mad at 18 years old, because that's what was happening, because I had no idea what the hell was going on. So I got done by the police, and that's what the headlines were. But, and that really affected me. Most of the people in Millam, when I've shared this story with them, said, but Kevin, you did nothing wrong, and they shouldn't have done you for it. But they did, and so as we know, when we go back on to our units or back on board ship, you get done by the colonel or by the captain. And so I got done again by the captain. He actually said to me that we don't need people like you on our ship, on my ship. And if I see you up here in front of me again, you'll be out the Navy. That sort of sobered me up a little bit for a little while. And so I'd continued to my career with the Navy, and things eventually got worse, and I put my notice in when I was doing my second back-to-back tour in the Gulf during the Armada Patrol in the 80s. So off I went, living my life the way I thought was the right way to live my life, really messing up my relationship with my wife. We were married for 31 years, and she'd put up with a lot. We met on the 1st December 1982, so she'd seen me through all sorts of stages. And eventually, I ended up going to these people and seeing a guy called Morgan O'Connell, who diagnosed me with subclinical PTSD. Subclinical because I was able to still function and get qualifications and everything else. I'd seen a civvy psychiatrist, and the civvy psychiatrist, I'd sat in his rooms in the Gosport War Memorial for 45 minutes sobbing. He wrote a letter back saying there's nothing wrong with me. And I thought, no, there's something not right here. So I eventually went to privately to a psychiatrist who said, there is definitely something wrong, Kevin. I don't know what it is, but I know a man who can. And he wrote a letter to Morgan O'Connell saying, this man is an enigma to me. So he couldn't crack me either. So he sent me off to Morgan. And they started me on my road to recovery. Now, I know combat stress isn't getting a lot of good press at the moment. And I know the psychiatric world isn't getting a lot of good press at the moment in supporting people, but they do a good job. And sometimes talking therapies do work. And as part of my therapies, the counsellor said to me, why don't you put your thoughts from your diary down onto paper and start writing it? And so I did. And I started to write Fearless, a diary of an 18-year-old at war. And, excuse me, whilst I was doing this, I with my roles being national roles, I'd be doing it on planes and trains and sitting in hotel rooms, but I'd get to certain points in the diary where I would break down. I couldn't go any further. I had tears streaming down my face in public on planes and things. And I used to shut it down. I just couldn't go any further. And I started doing this in 2004. It took me 20 years to seek help. And I started this in 2004. And I went, fortunately, I went back in 2012. And I met a guy called Graham Masters. Yeah, no, Graham, can't remember. Yeah, I think it's Masters. It keeps coming to my mind. He was with 2 Para in Goose Green. He got the military medal for the surrender incident where they took out the surrender party, and he then rolled 20 yards to take out the machine gun post that killed his mates, and he got the military medal for it. And he was now coaching a thing called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is all about using language to change your mindset and achieve what you want to achieve. And I explained to him what was going on with me in my book and the things that I was still struggling with. And he gave me some tools from the NLP toolbox. And we set a goal to complete that book by December 2014, December the 24th, 2014. And between September and December 2014, I'd written 20,000 words in 10 years. In those 3 or 4 months, I wrote another 50,000 words. Because whatever he said to me, whatever we'd done, whatever exercises we'd carried out, it had released a massive blockage. And I could quite freely write about my thoughts and my feelings. And I continued then to go on and do more with that and start getting into the coaching world and supporting other people, which is what I'm doing now. I eventually became a hypnotherapist. I'm now known as a rapid pain elimination therapist because I actually chose to change my life and take responsibility. For 20 odd years plus, I was a victim. I blamed the Falklands War for everything. I blamed everybody else around me for the way I was. I made excuses. I denied there was anything wrong with me. And I lived that life for 20 odd years until I met Graham. And this sounds like worshipping this guy, but going into NLP really changed my life. And it was very simple, just using words and language to make the change happen. And I no longer had to talk about when I went to a counsellor. In fact, I stopped going to counsellors. I stopped taking antidepressants. I was on antidepressants for nearly 15 years, and I stopped taking antidepressants. I've got a dodgy back. I was on cocodamol and 10 milligrams of diazepam 2 or 3 times a day. I stopped taking that because the pain's gone in my back. I've still got a knackered back. I can't run, as you can see. But I don't have the pain in my back. And that's all because of the power of the unconscious mind. So I took the ownership, accountability, and responsibility to make that change happen. Now, this is where I may get a little controversial, because some people choose to remain that victim. You get told by your doctors that you can't change. You've got arthritis. You're gonna have that pain for the rest of life. Here, take these tablets. You've got anxiety or trauma. Here, have these tablets or PTSD. You're going to live with that for the rest of your life. You can only manage it. Well, I'm working with people now who spend an hour and a half with me, deep in anxiety, or with PTSD, or with fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, who walk away from my rooms absolutely pain-free. I had a sergeant from the Queen's Lancashire Regiment a couple of weeks ago, suicidal, self-harming. He checked himself into the crisis team. He was put to me by a local charity, And after I finished my session with him, we were talking about the next stage because I wanted to get him back into work and everything else. That's what he wanted to do. And he just slumped forward in the chair with his head in his hands, sobbing. And I thought, oh shit, this has gone wrong. This isn't working. And I said, you okay? And he said, I'm fucking marvellous. He said, you've given me a new life. I just feel that everything I've ever gone through wasn't there. And I just know now that I can do something different. And I booked an appointment for 2 weeks later to do some coaching with him to get him into work. He didn't keep that appointment because he'd found a job. He'd been in counselling for 10 years and had struggled. He lost his family. He couldn't see his daughters because of his behaviours. He stopped drinking, which was brilliant. He hadn't drunk for 2 years. However, one session with me, I think he was out of work for about 3 years. And at one stage he was homeless until this charity took him on. And within 2 weeks, he had himself a job. The power of your unconscious mind, the power of making the choice to make those changes happen. And so that's what I do now. And I work with veterans, whether it's face-to-face or online. And I work with veterans for free if their issues are created by their active service and if they can't afford to pay. If you can afford to pay, great. You can make a donation, whatever. But I am happy to work with anybody who's struggling for free to change their lives. Because I've been there, I've done it, and I know that when you take that ownership, accountability and responsibility, you can really change your life. And that's what we do now. And the work I do now is called rapid pain elimination therapy, as I've just explained it to you. And it's just talking to your unconscious mind. I don't even need to hypnotise you. I just bore you to death with my talking, so I'm going to stop in a minute. Because after you finish listening to me, you want to get out of the room. But no, seriously, it's incredible. It's the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. And I've been back to the Falklands a couple of times now, 3 times in fact. 2007, 2012, and recently 2 weeks ago. And if you haven't been back, and you're struggling, guess what? Rachel does a fantastic job over here organising these events and keeping us guys in contact with each other. Get your backside down there and actually meet some of the people down there. It is one of the most humbling and beautiful experiences I've ever had. And it really can clear a lot of your demons. We were very fortunate in 2007 when Blair sent his junior minister down to observe what was going on with the 250 veterans that went to the Falklands on that pilgrimage with combat stress and South Atlantic. And he saw the changes in people while they were down there. And he went back and said to Tony Blair that you've got to get these people down there more often. And they gave us access through SAMA and the Falklands Veterans Foundation now, which was started shortly after, just before, wasn't it? Those indulgent slant concessionary flights as they are now. 248 quid. Okay, if you travel by land, Chile or whatever, it's 1,500 quid, but 248 quid return. And the hospitality you receive down there, the Liberty Lodge, the people there are absolutely incredible. Please, I really recommend that you take the opportunity to get down there. And I'm happy to travel with anybody down there because it's a bloody incredible experience. I was there, say, 2 weeks ago. I'm going to go back again in November. I've been invited back by my host family, who we've become very close friends, to be the godfather to their youngest child. You know, that's the sort of relationship you build up with the islanders. And no story about the Falkland Islands would be complete without pictures of penguins. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.